Hello, my name is Rebecca Naus-Perillo, and I am a business management specialist with GSA Center for Charge Card Management. Today, I will be presenting the GSA SmartPay Purchase Management Essentials course. This is a basic introduction about GSA SmartPay's purchase business line geared towards newer AOPCs. For more seasoned charge card management professionals, we are also offering the Advanced Purchase Management course during this year's forum, so please try to check out that course if your schedule allows. Just a quick reminder that all of the forum courses are available on demand through the end of July if you're not able to attend one of the live sessions, and you receive CLP credit whether you attend the live session or whether you attend the on-demand session. So we have quite a bit of information to review today, so let's go ahead and get started. First, we'll provide you with some high-level information about the GSA SmartPay program. The GSA SmartPay program is the largest government charge card and related payment solutions program in the world. The program has over 6.5 million purchase, travel, fleet, and integrated accounts and supports more than 560 agencies and organizations across the federal government. Since the award of the initial GSA SmartPay master contract in 1998, the GSA SmartPay program has provided convenient, efficient, and effective payment solutions for the federal government, tribes, and tribal organizations. For the GSA SmartPay 3 program, also called SP3, there are two contractor banks, Citibank and US Bank. Agencies pay no direct fees for using the GSA SmartPay program. And one of the very best parts of the program for agencies is the opportunity to earn refunds, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So again, there are two contractor banks for SP3, Citibank and US Bank. And the brands that work with Citibank are MasterCard, Visa, and for fleet transactions, Right Express, also known as WEX, and the brands that work with US Bank are MasterCard, Visa, and for fleet transactions, Voyager. Through contracts with Citibank and US Bank, the GSA SmartPay program enables agencies and organizations across the federal government to obtain payment solutions to support mission needs. The GSA SmartPay master contract administered by GSA is a fixed price, indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity, or IDIQ type contract. The maximum base period for the initial order is 4 years with 3 3-year options. The base year just ended on November 29th, 2022, so we are now in our first option period. To participate in the program, agencies and organizations must be eligible to issue a task order against the GSA SmartPay master contract. So your agency awarded a task order to one of the two GSA SmartPay contractor banks, and then you selected either Visa or MasterCard branded accounts. So no matter which path your agency chose, it is through the task order that accounts are set up and managed by agency organization program coordinators, also known as AOPCs. And AOPCs have access to the bank's electronic access system, which is the EAS, and they also work with the banks to resolve issues and answer questions. And we'll talk more about the AOPC role in just a bit. Understanding the terms and conditions of the GSA SmartPay master contract is important to performing your role as a program coordinator. The terms and conditions of the master contract identify specific contractual requirements that the GSA SmartPay program has with the banks. So you can take a look at the GSA SmartPay master contract on our program's website, which is smartpay.gsa.gov. Download a copy of the master contract, review the relevant clauses and sections that pertain to the purchase program, as well as the overall GSA SmartPay program. During the forum, you may want to also attend the GSA SmartPay 3 Master Contract Basics course. That could be a helpful course for you to attend. Just keep in mind that if you're not able to attend one of those live sessions, again, all the courses are available on demand through the end of July 2023. Okay, let's review some GSA SmartPay program stats. Okay, so first we'll take a look at the GSA SmartPay program overall, which includes all business lines, purchase, travel, integrated, and fleet. And then we'll review some purchase numbers separately. So here you'll see that the FY 2022 spend for the entire GSA SmartPay program overall was $32.8 billion, which is up about 12% from FY 2021. Now, as far as refunds are concerned, total refunds were up in FY 2022, totaling over $426 million. Again, these refunds go back to agencies to reinvest in their missions. Transactions were up almost 13% in FY 2022, totaling over 78 million transactions, and total accounts were up about 8% in FY 2022, totaling 6.56 million accounts. So overall, FY 2022 GSA SmartPay program numbers were very strong. All right, so now let's go over some purchase numbers. As mentioned before, the FY 2022 spend for the GSA SmartPay program overall was $32.8 billion. The purchase business line accounted for about 70% of that spend, or about $23 billion. The graph on the left of the screen shows the trend for business account spend from month to month for FY 2022. There were 19 million purchase transactions in FY 2022, which was pretty similar to the previous fiscal year, and about 1.1 million purchase accounts in FY 2022, which is up about 10% from the previous fiscal year. All right, also on this slide, you'll see the top 5 agencies for purchase-related spend. In the top spot, you'll see the VA. They account for nearly 60% of the purchase spend. Then in the second spot, you'll see DoD, and they account for about 21% of the purchase spend. After the VA and DoD, the Department of Justice, Department of Health and Human Services, and the Department of Interior follow to round out the top 5 for purchase-related agency spend. Now here's some FY 2022 refund information. You can see that this list of top 5 agencies for refunds is very similar to the top 5 agencies for spend from the last slide. So this just reminds you that there's always an opportunity to improve. Higher spend leads to more refunds for your agency. Therefore, your agency may want to consider using your purchase accounts more frequently, or for more things, or for higher dollar value items. The higher spend will lead to an increase in the refunds that go back to your agency. Okay, so let's take a quick look at some of the key players associated with the GSA SmartPay program. So take a look at this graphic. You can see there are many different parties involved in the GSA SmartPay program. You've got account holders, you've got the banks, you have the brands, you have OMB, the Inspector General, agencies and organizations, you have my office, the Center for Charge Card Management. But in this part of the presentation, we're just going to focus on the AOPC's roles and responsibilities. As an AOPC, you are responsible for the overall management and oversight of the accounts under your span of control. I'm going to review these typical roles and responsibilities of the AOPC, but this may vary depending on the hierarchies for control and oversight established at your agency. Agencies are the focal point for answering all questions related to the charge card program at the agency and organization level. AOPCs also have several other responsibilities. In general, they set up, maintain, renew, terminate accounts, and we'll talk about that in a bit. They serve as a liaison between account holders and the contractor banks. They provide ongoing advice and assistance to account holders. They develop agency policy and procedures. They audit accounts as required, and they use the bank's EAS to perform account management and oversight. As the AOPC, you have the discretion to initiate suspension and/or cancellation for any account. However, you must document the reason for suspension and/or cancellation. Suspension is the process by which an account is deactivated due to the delinquency or multiple pre-suspension actions. An account is considered past due if payment for the undisputed principal amounts has not been received within 45 calendar days from the billing date. The contractor bank may suspend an account when the account becomes delinquent. Once payment of the undisputed principal amount and Prompt Payment Act interest is received, the bank is required to reinstate the suspended account unless otherwise specified by the AOPC. AOPCs may also notify the bank of any mission-related extenuating circumstances for which the account should not be suspended. An account can be canceled if an undisputed balance remains unpaid for the prescribed number of calendar days after the date of the statement of account on which the charge first appeared. An account may also be canceled for numerous suspensions. Once an account has been canceled, the contractor bank is under no obligation to reinstate the account. Accounts may be canceled through your bank's EAS or through the bank's customer service office. The following chart may be used as a guide for determining the status of an account, but please refer back to your agency policy for specific delinquency stages because they may be different from what I have right here. AOPCs are responsible for closing and terminating accounts. So generally speaking, there are 4 steps to closing or terminating an account, and they are as follows. You would immediately notify the contractor bank when the account is no longer required. You would follow the account closeout procedures from your contractor bank. You would instruct the account holder to destroy or dispose of the card by cutting it into pieces. And you would also review the master file or the account holder listing to ensure that the account has been closed. As a program coordinator, be sure to instruct your account holders to report a lost or stolen purchase account promptly to the contractor bank, to you, the AOPC, and to their supervisor. Once an account has been reported as lost or stolen, the contractor bank immediately blocks that account from further usage, and a new account number will be issued to the account holder. If the account holder does not recognize a transaction appearing on their statement, they are responsible for notifying the contractor bank within 90 calendar days from the transaction date to initiate a dispute, unless otherwise specified by the agency and organization. Okay, so let's dig in and talk a little bit more about some topics that apply to GSA SmartPay's purchase business line. Okay, first off, there are 2 types of product and services offerings under the GSA SmartPay 3 master contract. You have Tier 1, required or core requirements, and Tier 2, value-added or optional requirements. The tiers and their respective products and services are found in the master contract, section C.1.1.1 and C.2.1.2 respectively. So you can check out some more information about them there. Tier 1 products Tier 1 products and services are the same across both contractor banks. So why is that? It's because they are our core requirements. They are the payment solutions that we use to initiate the majority of our transactions under the GSA SmartPay program. Both Citibank and US Bank were required to propose on the Tier 1 offerings in order to receive a contract. All business lines under the GSA SmartPay 3 contract include the Tier 1 or mandatory products and services shown in the left-hand column. Those Tier 1 products and services specific to the purchase business line are shown in the right-hand column. So those are convenience checks, declining balance cards, foreign currency cards. Tier 1 products and services are available at no cost to your agency simply by using the GSA SmartPay purchase card. The only exceptions are the 2 items shown in italics and marked with an asterisk. So those are the non-exchange based government-to-government G2G transactions and convenience checks, which do come at a fee to the government. So check with your Level 1 AOPC to learn more about the specific Tier 1 products and services available to your agency under your GSA SmartPay task order. Fees for those 2 items are established in your agency's task order. So you may notice that several of the items that are now listed under Tier 1 mandatory products and services used to be a Tier 2 under GSA SmartPay 2. So basically, like as the industry evolves, so does our program, and so do the products and services that we receive. All right, Tier 2 offerings. The contractor banks were not required to offer or provide Tier 2 value-added products and services to receive a master contract award. Tier 2 products and services vary by contractor bank and by business line. These optional Tier 2 items augment or add value to the payment solution processes found in Tier 1, or may be a separate payment solution or service that is a proprietary offering and unique to that particular contractor bank. Tier 2 products and services must be offered at the master contract level in order to make them available at the agency task order level. All business lines under the GSA SmartPay 3 contract include the parent categories of Tier 2 products and services shown in the left-hand column. However, since Tier 2 products and services are value-added or optional, they may or may not be included in each bank's GSA SmartPay 3 master contract. And again, they vary from bank to bank. The Tier 2 products and services category specific to the purchase business line, that would be optional ATM access shown in the right-hand column. Tier 2 products and services also typically come at a cost to your agency when utilized. Again, if you have questions about what products or services were included in your agency's task order, please reach out to your Level 1 AOPC for more information. Okay, so now let's talk about micro purchases or MPTs. The Federal Acquisition Regulation, subpart 13.201B states, the government-wide commercial purchase card shall be the preferred method to purchase and to pay for micro purchases. See FAR 2.101. Sounds easy enough, right? Well, that simple guidance gets a little more complicated when we break it apart. So what falls under a micro purchase? How is a micro purchase defined? A micro purchase is defined by FAR subpart 2.101 as an acquisition of supplies or services using simplified acquisition procedures, the aggregate amount of which does not exceed the micro purchase threshold. As we will see in our next slide, however, we have had some variation in this over the past few years. The MPT threshold has changed over the years, as you can see from this particular graphic. The FY 2018 NDAA Section 806 included an increase of the MPT for civilian agencies to $10,000 for supply procurements and some services procurements. The FY 2019 NDAA Section 821, signed into law in August 2018, increased the DoD MPT threshold to $10,000 on par with civilian agencies. Okay, so let's go through some common scenarios that purchase account holders encounter that involve the micro purchase threshold. First up, let's talk about construction. So there is an exception for construction where the MPT is set at $2,000 rather than at $10,000. Construction is defined by FAR subpart 2.101 as construction, alteration, or repair of buildings, structures, or other real property, and includes improvements of all types. So that could be bridges, dams, plants, highways, parkways, streets, subways, tunnels, and the list goes on. Examples of construction include building a structure, repairing a hole in a parking lot or street, replacing a leaking roof or window. Also, some tasks which appear to be services are actually construction depending on the volume or work being performed. The MPT for construction is $2,000 and is set by the Wage Rate Requirements Construction Statute, formerly known as the Davis-Bacon Act. Any construction activities totaling over $2,000 in aggregate costs must be referred to your procurement office for purchase. What about the micro purchase threshold and services? Are there exceptions? FAR subpart 37.101 defines services as directly engaging the time and effort of a contractor whose primary purpose is to perform an identifiable task rather than to furnish an end item of supply. A service contract may be either a non-personal or personal contract. It can also cover services performed by either professional or non-professional personnel, whether on an individual or organizational benefit or basis. Sorry about that. Examples of services include maintenance and repair of all types of equipment, motor pool operation, parking, taxi cab, ambulance services, packing, crating, storage, custodial, janitorial, housekeeping, food service, laundry, linen supply, and again, the list continues. The MPT for services is set at $2,500. Examples of professional services are where a preponderance of the work is performed by a profession recognized as such based on a prolonged course of study. So professional services include AE services, chemists, biologists, accountants, lawyers, medical, dental, physics, and instructors of the same. A written determination that the service to be provided is professional in nature should be made, preferably with the assistance of the contracting office or legal counsel, and added to the purchase card transaction file. The MPT for professional services is set at $10,000. Okay, so now let's talk about the micro purchase threshold and supplies. So FAR subpart 2.101 defines supplies as property except for land or interest in land. Supplies are tangible items. They include things like office supplies, computers, cleaning supplies, equipment, machine, tools, signage, parts of accessories, and other products required for official government use. The MPT for the purchase of supplies is set at $10,000. FAR subpart 8.405-1 outlines the ordering procedures for supplies at or below the micro-purchase threshold when using GSA schedule contracts. When using GSA schedule contracts, ordering activities are not required to solicit from a specific number of schedule contractors, but should distribute orders among qualified contractors. So, for example, 3 schedule contractors in your immediate area, they can make signage for your base. Your last order went to ABC Signs, so your next order should go to one of the other 2 remaining vendors who can still meet your needs. This same idea about rotating vendors should be applied when using the purchase card on the open market as a procurement mechanism. Ordering activities must also consider required sources of supply, which we will cover in detail in just a few slides. Depending on the type and value of the property purchased, your purchase may be considered government property and subject to government property control requirements, such as the need to barcode, tag, and/or track property via inventory and hand receipt procedures. Account holders should be aware of any such control requirements for their agency should they purchase these types of property. There is a micro-purchase threshold exception for the contingency operations. In FY 98, the Stafford Act increased the MPT for the use of under contingency operations. Contingency operations include the acquisition of supplies or services that, as defined by the head of the agency, are to be used to support a contingency operation or to facilitate defense against or recovery from cyber, nuclear, biological, chemical, or radiological attack, international disaster assistance, and emergency or major disaster. Excluded from these higher thresholds, however, is construction, subject to the wage rate requirements construction statute that we just discussed earlier on the slide for MPT exceptions for construction. The micro-purchase threshold for both civilian and military agencies is $20,000 in the case of any contract to be awarded and performed or purchase to be made inside of the U.S., and $35,000 in the case of any contract to be awarded and performed or purchase to be made outside of the U.S. Purchases using the authority must have a clear and direct relationship to the support of a contingency operation. Typically, the head of the agency or their delegated authority, such as the senior procurement executive, will define the contingency operation in writing and provide parameters for the use of the purchase card. International disaster assistance is at the request of the Secretary of State or the administrator of the United States Agency for International Development. And as we've seen, emergencies may include things like COVID-19 and the pandemic response for COVID-19, or other declared emergency by the President of the United States. Methods of use, FAR 13.301. The purchase card can be used in 3 ways, depending on the value of the transaction and the authority of the account holder. 1, it can be used as a procurement method. So the card may be used as a procurement tool to acquire and pay for goods and services by means other than the use of an existing contract. So basically to make micro purchases. It can be used as an ordering mechanism. The card may be used to place a task or delivery order for goods and services if authorized in an existing contract, like a GSA schedules contract or an agency's IDIQ. It can be used as a payment mechanism. The card may be used to make payments for goods and services when acquired by other means, such as through a contract. Let's take a look at this chart to see some purchase account uses at or below the micro-purchase threshold and over the micro-purchase threshold. Again, we're talking about FAR subpart 13.301. For transactions at or below the micro-purchase thresholds for supplies, services, and construction, as we previously discussed, account holders may use their cards as procurement, ordering, and payment mechanisms within their single and monthly transaction limits. For actions valued over the micro-purchase thresholds for supplies, services, and construction, the procurement mechanism may not be used. For actions valued over the micro-purchase threshold for supplies, services, and construction, only account holders who are warranted COs and ordering officers may use the ordering mechanism to place task or delivery orders against existing contracts if use of the purchase card is authorized in the basic contract terms and conditions. For actions valued over the micro-purchase threshold for supplies, services, and construction, only account holders who are warranted COs and payment officials may use the payment mechanism to make payments on purchase orders, task or delivery orders, or contracts where the purchase card is accepted as form of payment. Remember, the contracting officer, ordering officer, payment official, authority limits, and account holder single purchase limits apply. So for example, if a contracting officer holds a $10 million warrant and has a purchase card with a $250,000 single purchase limit, they may only place an order or make a payment using the purchase card up to the $250,000 single purchase limit. The account holder is held to the lower of their two limits. COs must comply with all federal procurement laws and agency regulations and policies when using the card. Account holders who are also COs or ordering officers are not exempt from the normal procurement processes simply because they hold the purchase card. This includes the need to issue a formal written purchase order contract, requirements for publicizing purchases, acquisition planning, and comply with other FAR agency and local policies. Also, please note the following about payment officials. Some agencies have individuals that hold payment cards for the sole purpose of making payments under established contracts. The dollar values for those persons should be delegated by the CO or chief financial officer, and the single purchase limit for those account holders may be higher than for the typical card holder in accordance with their agency policy. Before we go any further, we get a lot of emails asking us if various FAR requirements apply to micro purchases. And here are a few of the most frequently asked questions. One question is, does the do not pay list apply to micro purchases? And the answer is no, it does not. The DNP is a list of entities or people maintained by the Bureau of the Fiscal Service who should not be paid. This list assists agencies to prevent improper payments, fraud, waste, and abuse. Due to the low level of correlation between the DNP list and the merchants from which the federal government typically makes micro purchases, there is no real need to check the DNP list prior to making a micro purchase. Another question, does the System for Award Management, or SAM, registration apply to micro purchases? The answer again is no, it does not. In accordance with FAR subpart 4.1102, contractors from which purchases are made under the MPT using a purchase card do not have to be registered in the SAM. Another question, for micro purchases, do you have to require offers to certify that their corporation does not have a delinquent tax liability or felony conviction? Again, the answer is no, you do not. So the FAR does have a provision, 52.209-11, that requires offers to certify that they are a corporation that does not have a delinquent tax liability or felony conviction, making them otherwise ineligible to receive an expenditure of federal funds. However, since micro purchases do not have any formal solicitation procedures for procurement on the open market, meaning we don't use RFQs or RFPs, it's really not applicable to micro purchases. Are written quotes required for micro purchases? Again, the answer is no. There is no requirement to obtain a written quote for a micro purchase. It really can and should be as simple as calling a vendor, explaining what you need, and providing a part number, possibly providing a simple statement of work or specification, and asking for a price over the phone. Agencies have different ways of documenting that process, but written quotes from the vendor are not required. And then, does competition apply to micro purchases? Again, the answer is no. FAR Part 6, competition requirements, tells us that competition does not apply to acquisition of products and services when using FAR Part 13, under which micro purchases fall. Again, we look at 13.301 for that. However, account holders should always rotate orders with vendors who can provide the products or services within the time frame required. And when ordering at or below the micro purchase threshold using GSA schedules, so that's FAR subpart 8.405-1 and 2, that part reads, ordering activities may place orders with any federal supply schedule contractor that can meet the agency's needs. Although not required to solicit from a specific number of scheduled contractors, ordering activity should attempt to distribute the orders among the contractors. Okay, let's talk sources of supply. So when trying to determine a source for the purchase, many considerations must be made. The FAR, specifically subpart 8.002A1 and 2, outlines mandatory sources for supplies and services in their descending order of priority, which is listed here on the table. This table is sometimes called the order of priority and should be used unless otherwise provided by law or by the head of the contracting activity, which is usually your SPE. That's the senior procurement executive. So let's take a look at the order of priority for supplies. Let's say you're asked to purchase an executive desk chair. What steps do you take to determine which source you should purchase the chair? So one, you look at the existing inventory at the agency to see if there is a chair that meets your needs. If the chair is unavailable within the agency, then you look to excess inventories at other agencies. If there's no chair available that meets your needs there, then you can go to Unicor to see if they're able to meet your needs. After that, then you would check your you would check the government's procurement list managed by AbilityOne for products from participating nonprofit agencies. If a chair meeting your needs cannot be found through an AbilityOne participating nonprofit agency, then you look to purchase from wholesale supply sources like GSA, DLA, or VA stock programs. After consideration has been made to the previous sources, then you may purchase from a commercial source. So that's how supplies work. Now let's take a look at services. So similar steps are taken for services, which you can see on the right-hand side of this table. First, you go to AbilityOne, and then you may go to Unicor or commercial services as your second priority for services. There are a few exceptions to consider when using the mandatory sources for things like utility services, printing and or printing supplies, leasing vehicles, strategic and critical materials from inventories exceeding defense national stockpile requirements and helium. Exceptions can be found in FAR subpart 8.003, and you can go there for additional guidance on these particular items. Also, when considering services to be performed by Unicor, do not disclose information considered classified or that provides maps, drawings, or other information about the layout of government facilities. To access the procurement list for the latest information on items and services that must be procured through mandatory sources, go to the ability.gov website. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Section 508. So Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act is discussed in the OMB circular. It requires that when federal departments develop, procure, maintain, or use information and communication technology, or ICT, they must ensure that such ICT allows employees with disabilities to access to and use information and data that is comparable to other employees. So when making a micro purchase of ICT, make sure that the available accessibility information applies to the version of the product to be purchased. Account holders making these types of purchases should consider 508 compliance. They should make sure to spend a reasonable amount of time on market research. They should consider the degree of risk for accessibility and make sure to use all available tools and resources. So in this slide, I've also linked the Accessibility Requirements tool, or the ART tool, and the United States Access Board website. Both of these resources can help with 508 compliance. Agencies are also required to account for the sustainability of products procured with the purchase card, consistent with the requirements detailed in the OMB circular and the FAR. The Green Procurement Compilation, or GPC, consolidates federal green purchasing information into one location. So again, when you have a moment, please take a look at this information. You can click on all the links that are active, and they'll take you right to those particular websites so you can see that information for yourself. Okay, 889 compliance has become a very hot topic over recent years. The FAR case 2018-017 prohibits the purchase of covered telecommunications equipment and services from vendors who sell products containing spyware. These devices could pose a threat to U.S. security by spying on or disrupting communications within the U.S. Section 889 was implemented as part of the fiscal year 2019 NDAA Act. It contains two parts. Part A includes language that prohibits the government from obtaining equipment and services from a defined list of covered entities. This part is applicable to the purchases, including it's applicable to purchases, including commercial items and micro purchases. Part B focuses on language related to the prohibition of entering into contracts with covered entities. It is applicable to all contracts, regardless of dollar value or sector. Vendors are required by the FAR to provide information on whether or not they are providing covered telecommunications under contracts and orders with the federal government. Our office has a new 889 tool that will go live on smartpay.gsa.gov around the end of this fiscal year. This tool will help your agency because it will be an easy way to check to see if a vendor is in compliance with Section 889 before you make a purchase. Once you go to the tool, you'll enter the vendor information like their name, the website, their commercial and government entity or CAGE code, or their unique entity ID, the UEI. The tool will provide you with the vendor's 889 representation summary based on their System for Award Management, or SAM, record at www.sam.gov. Please note that if a vendor's representation is not available, account holders may still be permitted to purchase from the listed vendor. However, the account holder is responsible for documenting compliance with Section 889 in accordance with their applicable agency requirements. You can read more about card management implications and information for agency consideration in relation to Section 889, prohibition of acquiring certain telecommunications and video surveillance equipment in our Smart Bulletin 33, which is available at smartpay.gsa.gov. Okay, and now we're going to cover convenience checks. And people ask, how convenient are convenience checks? And the answer is they are not very convenient. So convenience checks are a payment and or procurement tool intended only for the use of authorized purchases with merchants that do not accept other forms of payment, such as the GSA SmartPay purchase card. Convenience checks should be used as a payment method of last resort only when no reasonable alternative merchant is available who accepts a GSA SmartPay purchase card. Please keep a few things in mind when using convenience checks. They provide thieves with an easy way to commit fraud, and they don't offer you the same kinds of consumer protections that other GSA SmartPay solutions do. Due to the nature of the product, additional care should be taken in managing accounts with convenience checks. Checks should be secured at all times to ensure against physical theft. Checks are to be stored in a locked container, such as a safe or a metal filing cabinet. Checks should be accounted for appropriately to prevent loss, theft, or potential forgery. The number of accounts and checks on hand should be limited to reduce risk. The AOPC is responsible for the implementation of the appropriate internal controls and oversight of convenience checks, including ensuring that all checks issued are for official government business only. Furthermore, convenience checks are deducted from total agency spend when calculating refunds. Agencies are charged a fee for each check written, so they reduce refunds to the agency, and they also increase fees to the agency. So just a quick reminder, do not use convenience checks if the vendor otherwise accepts the purchase card, to pay for modifications to work under another method of acquisition, to reimburse an employee for cash advances, salary payments, cash awards, or other transactions processed through the payroll system, for travel-related transportation tickets or meals or lodging while an employee is on travel, unless there's an emergency, specific related to an emergency incident response, or for any other restricted purchase as determined by the agency policy. Okay, let's touch on recurring payments. The general rule of thumb is that when you have recurring payments, you may use the purchase card to make those payments if the aggregate total of the payments over a 12-month period or less, if the contract duration is shorter, does not exceed the single transaction limit of the account holder. Again, payment officials who are delegated higher authority for payment purposes will be subject to the policies of the agency in that case. So let's go ahead and discuss a scenario. An account holder has a single transaction limit of $10,000. The account holder is asked to make 15 equal monthly payments totaling $12,000 on an order. Can they make the recurring payments using their purchase card? The answer here is yes. So if you take the $12,000 and you divide it by 15 months, we get a monthly payment amount of $800. If you take that $800, you multiply it by 12 months or a year, that gives you $9,600, which is less than the amount, that's less than the account holder's single transaction limit of $10,000. So they can make the payments with their purchase card. Also, please note, do not split payments to a single vendor between account holders to circumvent the 12-month recurring payments guidelines. That is not permitted. Okay, let's talk about a split purchase. So what is a split purchase? Splitting purchases is a prohibited practice with the card. This occurs when a single transaction is broken down in two or more smaller transactions to circumvent the account holder's single transaction limit or to stay under the micro purchase threshold. Account holders and approving officials that participate in split purchases may have their cards revoked or face disciplinary action. So again, let's go through a scenario. An account holder has a single transaction limit of $10,000. The account holder needs to purchase a flatbed trailer for a strategic customer with a delivery required within 48 hours. The total cost for that is $12,000. The account holder calls the vendor who has one trailer in stock for delivery tomorrow. The account holder is crunched for time, so they ask the vendor to charge their card $10,000 today and $2,000 tomorrow to complete the purchase. Is this a split purchase? Yes, the answer is yes, this is a split purchase. It's a split purchase, and it's actually a real life example. So in this case, the project manager ended up suspended for 14 days for improper use of the card, and the requester or the customer, they were reprimanded for their involvement by submitting separate budget requests. So please caution your account holders against this type of practice. Tax exemption and surcharges, another very popular topic. So another presentation plug, allow me to quickly mention that the GSA SmartPay team also offers a full class on taxes. So you may want to check that out during the forum if your schedule allows. So all purchase card accounts fall into the category of centrally billed accounts or CBAs, for which the customer agency is directly billed and liable for making the payment. As such, transactions under the purchase card are exempt from the sales tax in all 50 states in the U.S. territories. Some states will still require a form to be completed for such an exemption. Vendors are expected to collect tax in accordance with established state tax laws and regulations. However, laws may change very suddenly, and merchants and vendors rely on point-of-sale employees who may not really have the updated information. Merchants and vendors may choose to err on the side of caution and assess taxes, even for CBA cards. So when a merchant is in doubt, account holders are encouraged to ask merchants to contact the applicable state taxation authority for clarification prior to completing the purchase. While sales tax is exempt in all states and U.S. territories for purchase cards, some states may have other taxes which the government is subject to pay. So just be aware that there are other taxes out there, and those may apply to purchase card transactions. If you ever have tax-related questions, please go to our website, smartpay.gsa.gov, and click on the Smart Tax icon, which you can see in the center of the left-hand side of the screen. And you can get some more tax information there. Surcharges may be assessed on purchases depending on the vendor. A surcharge is a fee added to the cost of purchase assessed by a retailer to compensate the retailer for the customer's use of a charge or credit card. Not all vendors will impose a surcharge. Several states actually don't allow or limit surcharges, and Visa and MasterCard have strict guidelines on the assessment of surcharges. Generally, the surcharge is capped at 4% of the total transaction. But some states have additional caps and guidelines. So for a comprehensive list of tax information and to view the GSA SmartPay bulletins that apply to taxes and surcharges, again, go to smartpay.gsa.gov. Third-party payment processors are non-exempt entities that provide payment processing services to merchants. So some examples are Apple Pay, PayPal, Square, among others. Although there are no existing government-wide policies or procedures outlining the use of third-party payment processors, several agencies have developed internal policy related to this issue. These policies range from the complete restriction of third-party payment processors to less restrictive policies, which allow for transactions to be made when a workaround cannot be identified. GSA SmartPay Bulletin 23 suggests that each agency and organization that you out there develop and issue internal guidance for the use of third-party payment systems. When you're doing that, agencies may want to consider the following potential issues regarding the use of third-party payment processors. Account holders are prohibited to establish accounts or agree to commercial terms and conditions of third-party payment processors without consent from their legal counsel or other proper authority. There may be limitations to account verification with third-party payment processors. In some instances, when using a third-party payment processor, the dispute process may greatly differ. A third-party processor may actually use a truncated merchant name that may create difficulty for reporting, reconciliation, and oversight purposes. And there's often less level 2 and level 3 transactional data available when utilizing a third-party payment processor. The account holder may only receive like the merchant name and dollar amount of the transaction when making a purchase with a third-party payment processor. So, take a look at our Smart Bulletin and keep all of this information in mind when creating your agency's third-party payment processor policy. Okay, of primary importance is the need to understand that the government has the right to dispute transactions. There are various reasons for disputing transactions, including unauthorized or incorrect charges for merchandise that has not been received, charges for returned merchandise. Maybe the statement does not include credits for which the account holder has been issued. In most cases, the account holder should contact the merchant directly to resolve any disputed charges and request a credit from the merchant. If the account holder and merchant are unable to resolve the dispute, the account holder can dispute a charge by visiting the contractor bank's website, contacting the bank's customer service number, or through the bank's EAS. The account holder will have to provide information, including the account number, transaction date, merchant name, transaction amount, account holder's signature, and a detailed explanation of the dispute. Sorry about that. All disputes must be reported to the bank within 90 days from the date the transaction was processed. All of the key players in the purchase card program should understand the importance for supporting documentation and the requirements for records management as it relates to the use of the GSA SmartPay purchase card. Records include all transaction-related documentation, such as documentation pertaining to the pre-approval to make a purchase card transaction, if and when such pre-approval is required by the account holder's agency policy, contractor quotes, invoices, documentation of approval and acceptance, funding information. What, how, and where this information is housed is based on your agency's policies. So AOPCs, please become familiar with the references listed on this slide, which involve record keeping and records retention. Okay, during this part of the presentation, we will review information on how you can minimize the risk of misuse or fraud in your GSA SmartPay purchase program. The most important thing you can do is to be aware of what activity is occurring on the accounts under your purview. Do not be afraid to ask questions if you identify unusual or suspicious transactions or behavior. Minimizing risk is very important. Misuse and abuse can take many different forms, but here are some of the most common examples. There could be purchases that exceed the authorized limit. There could be purchases which no funding is available. The account holders must take steps to ensure the security of their account. This means that the purchase account must be used by the account holder and only for official government business. If the account holder allows others to use the purchase account, the account holder will be personally liable. They will be held personally liable to the government for any unauthorized transactions. Split transactions, which we've talked about before. So that's any purchase that as a whole would exceed the micro purchase threshold limit, but is separated into smaller transactions in order to avoid the MPT limit. That's a split transaction. That's not allowable. Products or services that do not meet the government's requirements. For instance, it would be questionable for an account holder to buy a $500, designer fountain pen when really there's many other quality fountain pens available for $50 or less. And also purchases for personal consumption. All purchases must be for official government use only. Thus, any purchase made that is for the account holder's personal, for their personal use rather than for official government use, that's considered to be misuse. So, for example, an account holder who uses the purchase card to buy himself lunch at the gas station because he has no cash available that day, that person's misusing the account. Purchases that are not authorized by the agency. Your agency may have additional limits on the use of the account, such as limiting certain categories or types of products or services. Please keep in mind that misuse by employees impacts your agency's charge card performance and refund earning potential. A key responsibility for most program coordinators is to detect and report suspected misuse. If a situation occurs where you must report suspected misuse, make sure that you have all the information necessary to assist with a formal inquiry or investigation. Contact the account holder to obtain any information that could explain the questionable charge. If the account holder provides documentation or an explanation regarding the charges and you still have questions or concerns about it, compile all of that information, such as the statement, exception report, documented contacts between you and the account holder, copies of receipts, before you report it. Your agency may ask you to report suspected misuse to one or more of the following personnel. So maybe the approving official, the finance officer, the Office of Inspector General, or the Office of Special Investigations. Consequences for misuse and abuse may include reprimand, counseling, suspension, termination, criminal prosecution. So please note that some agencies have agency-specific policies and consequences for misuse and abuse for the purchase account. Fraud is a deception deliberately practiced with the motive of securing unfair or unlawful gain. Fraud can be an attempt to cheat the federal government and corrupt its agents by using GSA SmartPay payment solutions for transactions that are not part of official government business. And like any deception, fraud has its fair share of victims. So some examples of fraud include counterfeit accounts, lost or stolen accounts. So often the physical cards are stolen. Non-receipt fraud, and this occurs when new or replacement cards are mailed and then stolen while in transit. Card not present fraud. So that happens when the account information is stolen and used to make online purchases. Usually a merchant will ask for the CVC code, which is located on the back of the card to help prevent this type of fraud. Phishing, this occurs when an account holder receives a fake email directing him or her to enter sensitive personal information on a phony website. The false information enables the criminal to steal information from the account holder. There could be identity theft, and this occurs when a criminal applies for an account using another person's identity and information. As a program coordinator, you must inform your account holders to be alert to the indicators of fraud, such as false charges, mischarging, bribes, gratuities, and kickbacks. And again, report suspected fraud immediately through the proper channels, which again could be the approving official, financial officer, IG, or Office of Special Investigations. Always follow your agency's policies and procedures when handling cases of suspected misuse and fraud. There could be some program management tools that can help you reduce fraud at your agency. You can consider credit limits. Credit limits restrict single, daily, weekly, or monthly expenditures per account in accordance with agency policy, and AOPC may set the limits which best meet the needs for your agency. You want to set limits that are realistic but not excessive. But by doing that, that could actually deter misuse. By reviewing spending patterns, you may be able to lower limits without really disrupting the agency's mission. AOPCs also have the authority to raise limits at any time in response to emergency or unforeseen circumstances. You could implement MCC blocks. So merchant category code blocks are established by the associations or contractor banks to identify different types of businesses. Merchants select the codes that best describe their business, and you may limit the types of businesses where the account will be accepted by limiting the MCCs available to the account holder. The contractor bank has established sample templates that may assist you in determining which MCC should be restricted. In the event that an account needs to make, In the event that an account needs to make a purchase outside of his or her restricted MCCs, AOPCs are authorized to override the restriction for a transaction by contacting the contractor bank's customer service rep. Agency organization policy should specify who is authorized to perform this type of override. Another program management tool, online reports. So AOPCs, you have access to many standard and ad hoc reports through the contractor's bank EAS. You also could consider account deactivation. In those instances when the purchase account is not needed on a continuous basis, a deactivation of the account may serve as a deterrent to fraud and or misuse. You may deactivate the account when the account's not being used. By understanding the use of the account, you can establish deactivation guidelines. Deactivation and reactivation can be completed through the bank's EAS or by calling the bank's customer service phone number. Also, there are guides. So the banks have developed written guides for AOPCs and account holders. So reach out to the banks if you'd like to take a look at them so you can provide them to the folks at your agency. Program coordinators can establish policies and procedures to detect fraud, waste, and abuse. They can emphasize standards of conduct and clearly state consequences for misuse. They can manage delinquency, and they can make sure to implement proper training. Okay, so during this part of the presentation, we're going to talk about some best practices for your consideration. Each agency runs their charge card program a bit differently, but perhaps you'll find some of these ideas and suggestions helpful as you learn to manage your charge card program. Good training and communication with your account holders is key. So train your account holders on the proper use of the purchase card. Use ethics training as another source for instruction. Develop a purchase hotline to respond to account holder questions. You may want to consider developing and maintaining a purchase-specific website for your agency. You could create a monthly newsletter for purchase policies and procedures. You could publish an FAQ page on the agency's internal website. You could send out periodic reminders on agency purchase policies and procedures. You may want to consider holding orientation sessions with new purchase account holders. You could email updates to other AOPCs at all levels on any important program changes. And you may want to consider performing an annual review of all issued accounts to determine whether each account meets the criteria for continued participation in the federal government purchase program. Program coordinators, as we talked about before, have access to a number of reporting tools that enable you to manage your purchase program effectively through the EAS. To access reports, just contact your bank, talk to the rep to obtain a user ID and password. Each bank has a slightly different suite of reports available, so review the contractor bank's AOPC guide or go online to learn more about the specific reports that they offer. Most electronic reports are updated within 2 to 3 days after a transaction. However, some reports are only updated at the end of a billing cycle. Program coordinators will also have access through the EAS to monitor account holder transactions at any time. By searching by account number, you can track transactions as well as view monthly statements. You may also contact the contractor's customer service at any time to request information on a specific account. So be sure to use the online tools provided by the banks, by GSA, and by your agency. Take the time to understand all those available reports, and please try to proactively review the reports regularly to oversee the purchase account program's financial condition, to monitor for fraud, waste, and abuse, and to track trends in delinquency rates and charge-offs and write-offs. You may want to think about using the exception report to detect misuse of the purchase account or any unusual spending patterns. And there's also ad hoc reports, so you can customize and or develop your own agency reports, and this helps to eliminate manual calculations, which is always a good thing. Just make sure you save copies of all generated electronic reports, especially statistical or summary reports. Due to the volume of information available, the bank will furnish information for a limited period of time, so usually about 18 months or less before archiving the data. Reports containing sensitive information like account holders, account holder information in general should be maintained in a secure location. So please review and follow your agency policy for instructions on printing and safeguarding those reports. And in closing, as charge card managers, please continue to review the GSA SmartPay website, read the GSA SmartPay master contract, study your agency's task order, attend the yearly GSA SmartPay training forum, which you're doing right now, so thank you for being here, and talk with your fellow AOPCs to learn more about the GSA SmartPay program overall, as well as more about your agency's specific charge card program policies. Also, it is helpful to get to know your bank's customer service reps and account managers. They can provide you with a wealth of information, and they are ready and able to answer questions to help you manage your program. Many of your responsibilities as an AOPC involves a good working relationship with the contractor bank. So before we go, I'd like to share a few resources with you. Go to the centralized mailing list service, so the CMLS, to order hard copies of the GSA SmartPay guides and publications. Simply refer to the specific publication by title ID or document ID. Both printing and shipping is free for agency customers. So if you click on the CMLS information link on this slide, you'll learn more about this service. And I've also provided their phone number and their email here for you. And I've also linked the publication named GSA SmartPay Helpful Hints for Purchase Account Use, which is for federal, civilian, and military audiences. And it's a mini booklet that contains the do's and don'ts for purchase account use, procedures for reporting a lost or stolen card, and the bank resource information. So you may be interested in providing this to your account holders. Again, after this presentation, it may be helpful for you to download this PowerPoint so you can keep all of this information handy. And you're wondering, how do I download this PowerPoint, Rebecca? If you're interested in downloading this PowerPoint or other forum PowerPoints, again, they're great resources. You just go to the forum website, which is gsasmartpayforum.org. And at the top of the screen, you'll click on Presentation CLPs. Then you'll see a link to the forum PowerPoints for the GSA presentations, as well as for the bank and brand presentations. In general, GSA PowerPoints for the forum will ultimately be housed on our program website, smartpay.gsa.gov. And then later on, after the forum event portal, once that closes, you'll likely see some of the training videos that are available in the portal on demand for those GSA classes. A lot of times we put several of those videos up on smartpay.gsa.gov. So if some of your colleagues did not attend this year's forum, they may be able to view some of the training videos later on after the event is over. However, they will not receive CLP credit like you are receiving today. Okay, here's the program website that I've mentioned throughout today's presentation, smartpay.gsa.gov. And here's our program's training website, training.smartpay.gsa.gov. The Center for Charge Card Management, CCCM, or my office, they offer free online purchase card training for AOPCs as well as for account holders at this website. To access the Purchase AOPC training, you just go to Program Coordinators, and then you click on Purchase, and then you'll see the training for AOPCs there. Agencies, organizations, and account holders can also reach out to our team via email at gsa_smartpay@gsa.gov. Our inbox is staffed Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern, with the exception of federal holidays. So we are there to help you. So feel free to reach out anytime, and we'll do our best to assist you as soon as possible. Here is Citibank's contact information. And here's US Bank's contact information. And now we've reached the end of today's presentation of GSA SmartPay Purchase Management Essentials. I hope that you have found it useful and helpful, and perhaps you've learned some new information today. Again, my name is Rebecca Naus-Perillo, and here is my email address, rebecca.naus@gsa.gov. Feel free to reach out to me at any time if you have any questions. And I want to thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for your time and attention, and have a wonderful day.